World War II began in 1939 and lasted until 1945. Japan, as part of the Axis, allied with Germany and Italy. As the war unfolded, Japan had occupied numerous territories in Asia and the Pacific and was engaged in a bloody and prolonged war against the Allies, led by the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union. The Manhattan Project was a research and development program carried out by the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada during World War II with the goal of developing the first nuclear weapon, known as the atomic bomb. The name Manhattan Project was derived from the central location of the project's main office in Manhattan, New York. The project was initiated in 1939 after Albert Einstein and other scientists alerted the US government to the possibility of developing an atomic weapon. Growing concerns that the Germans might develop this technology first led the United States to start the project under the leadership of theoretical physicist Julius Robert Oppenheimer. The Manhattan Project involved thousands of scientists, engineers, and workers at various research and development sites across the United States and Canada. The two main research sites were the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, where most of the bomb design and development took place, and the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, where the fissile material necessary for the bombs was produced. The Manhattan Project focused on two different atomic bomb designs, Little Boy and Fat Man. Little Boy was a uranium-235 bomb and was used in the attack on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. Fat Man was a plutonium-239 bomb and was used in the attack on Nagasaki on August 9, 1945. The Manhattan Project and the successful development of atomic bombs marked a historical milestone and changed the nature of war and international relations. The devastating effects of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki raised greater awareness of the dangers of nuclear weapons and have influenced world politics to this day. The project also had a significant impact on science and technology, driving important advances in physics, engineering, chemistry, and mathematics. Furthermore, the Manhattan Project paved the way for the nuclear age and the subsequent development of nuclear weapons, leading to an arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. On August 6, 1945, during World War II, the United States carried out the nuclear attack on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. At 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945, the B-29 aircraft Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul Tibbets, flew over the city of Hiroshima and dropped the atomic bomb, Little Boy. The bomb exploded at an altitude of about 600 meters above the ground, releasing an immense amount of nuclear energy. The explosion created an enormous fireball that rapidly expanded and devastated a large part of the city. It is estimated that around 70% of the buildings in Hiroshima were destroyed, and the explosion generated a shockwave and heat that instantly killed about 70,000 people, many of whom were vaporized or suffered mortal injuries. Additionally, thousands of people were gravely injured and trapped under the debris. The attack on Hiroshima had devastating long-term consequences. In addition to immediate deaths and injuries, many people suffered from the effects of radiation in the days, weeks, and years following the attack. The radiation released by the bomb caused serious illnesses, such as cancer and leukemia, and had a lasting impact on the health of the survivors, known as hibakusha. 11:02 a.m. on August 9, 1945, the B-29 aircraft, Bockscar, piloted by Major Charles Sweeney, flew over the city of Nagasaki and dropped the atomic bomb, Fat Man. The bomb exploded at an altitude of approximately 500 meters above the ground, releasing an immense amount of nuclear energy. The explosion generated a powerful shockwave and a massive fireball that destroyed a large part of the city. It is estimated that about 40% of Nagasaki was devastated. The bomb instantly killed about 40,000 people and left many more gravely injured. Similarly to the attack on Hiroshima, the attack on Nagasaki had devastating long-term consequences due to the radiation released by the bomb. People exposed to the radiation suffered severe illnesses, including cancer, and many survivors experienced long-lasting effects throughout their lives. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito of Japan announced Japan's unconditional surrender in a radio broadcast. It was the first time the emperor addressed the Japanese people through the media and delivered a recorded message. In his speech, The emperor mentioned the devastating effects of the atomic bombings and the need to end the war to prevent further destruction and loss of lives. Japan's surrender marked the end of World War II and allowed for the Allied occupation of the country. Japan accepted the surrender terms outlined in the Potsdam Declaration, which included military occupation, the abolition of Japanese armed forces, the release of prisoners of war, and the implementation of political and social reforms. The process of demilitarization and reconstruction of Japan after the war was a significant challenge, but the country was able to rebuild and transform into an economic and technological powerhouse in the following decades. This event marked the beginning of a new era for Japan and paved the way for reconstruction and the pursuit of peace and reconciliation in the region. The atomic attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki are historical events that have been the subject of controversy since they occurred up to the present day. One of the most significant debates is whether the atomic attacks were necessary to end World War II. Some argue that the use of nuclear bombs was a justified measure to avoid a costly land invasion of Japan, which would have resulted in a large number of casualties for both the Allied forces and the Japanese. Other critics argue that Japan was already on the brink of defeat and that the atomic attacks were unnecessary and excessively destructive. The atomic attacks caused enormous loss of life and destruction, mainly among the civilian population. It is estimated that around 140,000 people died in Hiroshima, and 70,000 in Nagasaki as a direct result of the explosions. Many of the deceased were civilians not involved in the war. The ethical question of using nuclear weapons against civilian populations has been a subject of controversy, and has led to debates on international humanitarian law. In addition to immediate deaths, survivors of the attacks suffered serious consequences from the radiation released by the atomic bombs. Many developed illnesses related to radiation exposure, such as cancer and other medical conditions, throughout their lives. The question of responsibility for the care and support of survivors and their descendants by the United States has been a subject of controversy. The use of nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki has also been a subject of political and military debate. Some critics argue that the attacks marked the beginning of a dangerous nuclear arms race, and contributed to the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Others question whether the real motivation behind the attacks was to send a political message to the Soviet Union rather than to end the war with Japan. The atomic attacks of Hiroshima and Nagasaki have left a profound impression on the world's consciousness about the dangers of nuclear weapons. They have led to a greater call for peace and nuclear disarmament and have been a constant reminder of the importance of avoiding armed conflicts and working towards a safer world. Commemorating the nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki is an important act to remember and reflect on the tragic events that occurred during World War II and to promote peace and nuclear disarmament. The commemorations of the nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki are significant moments to unite people around the idea of a world without nuclear weapons and in pursuit of peace. Through these commemorations, it is hoped that the memory of the tragic events will be kept alive, and that efforts will continue towards a safer and more peaceful world for future generations.